What's going on, guys? It's ETA Prime back here again. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Game Kiddy GDK 350H retro handheld console. Now the console itself supposedly does CPS 1, CPS 2, CPS 3, Neo Geo, SNES, NES, Mega Drive, Game Gear, Game Boy, Game Boy Advance, Game Boy Color, PS1, and a few others like Neo Geo and some other MAME stuff. In this video, I want to test as much as possible and see how this thing really performs, because a lot of people talk really highly of this device, and with the specs included, it should be able to do everything that I mentioned pretty decently. They do offer a few different colors. I've seen it in yellow, gray, a smoke transparent, a regular transparent, and this transparent blue that I chose here. I really like the look of this, and overall, the console actually feels pretty good in the hands. As for the price on the 350H, I've seen it vary kind of widely across the internet. I've seen it as low as $52 all the way up to $94, and in my opinion, I think this is around a $50 to $60 device if you're in the market for something like this. So straight off the bat, the first thing everybody's going to notice about this is we only have a single analog stick and dual triggers up top. Keep in mind that not a lot of PS1 games actually supported the dual analog sticks on the DualShock controller, but there are a few that did require it, so those are probably out of the question when using them on this device. But we do have that single D-pad, and it actually feels a lot better than some of these other Chinese handheld consoles. We also have A, B, X, Y, start and select over here on the right hand side. This has a single 1-watt speaker setup. We don't have dual speakers in here. And on the top, we have a micro SD card slot for adding more games, our power button, micro USB, yes, it's micro USB and not USB Type-C, and our 3.5mm headphone jack. The 350H does include a user replaceable 2300 mAh battery, and they're claiming up to 6 hours of gameplay. Now this is really going to depend on what emulator you're using, screen brightness, and CPU overclock. Now it's really hard to talk about the 350H without bringing up the RG350. For just a little bit more money, you can get those dual analog sticks and the 4 triggers up top, but the 350H does offer a higher powered CPU. And in my experience with the 350H, I've actually had better performance in PS1 and CPS 3 over the RG350, but it is lacking those extra buttons that a lot of people love. So here it is, the 350H is running OpenDingX, just like many of the other Chinese handheld consoles on the market today. We have our ports, emulators, settings, and I believe there's a video and a music player in here that I've really never used. I am on the latest official firmware as of making this video, but I did add an extra emulator. This is the newer updated FBA emulator, which should allow full-speed CPS 3 emulation on the 350H. Taking a quick look at the specs of the 350H, for the CPU we have a MIPS X1830. This is at 1.5 GHz out of the box, but it can be overclocked to 1.9 from software. 128 megabytes of internal RAM, a 3.5-inch IPS 320 by 240 display, and it looks really great to the naked eye, but on camera you do see a lot of banding or aliasing. There was absolutely nothing I could do. I tried several different cameras and different resolutions, but I always got banding when I was filming the screen. But in real life, you don't see this whatsoever with your naked eye. A 2300 mAh user replaceable battery, and they claim up to 6 hours of gameplay, and it will support up to a 512 GB micro SD card. If we head over here to the settings menu, we can find our overclock. From the menu option, CPU performance, we can go all the way up to 7, and this should put the CPU at 1.9 GHz. At least that's the story on the street. Personally, I have no way of testing the true CPU speed here, but I can tell you that it definitely dramatically increases performance in PS1 emulation when we have this set to 7, so it is doing something. So before I get into testing on the 350H, I do want to get the elephant out of the room. Recently, Odroid released the Odroid Go Advance, and in my opinion, it's worth the wait. If you don't mind doing a little bit of tinkering, I would wait for the Odroid Go Advance. The next shipment should be in May, and just from a standpoint of raw performance, the Go Advance is much more powerful than any of these MIPS-powered Chinese handheld consoles. Even though the 350H can be overclocked to 1.9 GHz and the Go Advance is only sitting at 1.3, this ARM CPU in the Go Advance will destroy this MIPS CPU. We also have a GPU to back us up for those games that support OpenGL, which will and do perform much better on the Go Advance. But if you're looking for a handheld right now, we're going to test out the 350H and see how it performs. So first things first, we need to get the lower end stuff out of the way, like Game Boy, Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance, NES, SNES, and then we'll move up to the higher end stuff, like CPS 1, 2, 3, and even PlayStation 1. For each one of these games you'll see in this video, I will have the name of the system and the name of the game on screen at any given time. And keep in mind, I'm not overclocked until we get to CPS 3 emulation. But overall, I've had a really good experience with the lower end systems, and like I mentioned, the aliasing you're seeing on the screen in this video is not present to the naked eye. For some reason, the screen that the 350H uses puts this off in video, and I've tried 4 different cameras, 4K, 1080p, and I even was going to go with 720 if it helped, but unfortunately this aliasing just shows up in the video. It's not visible to the naked eye. So Yoshi's Island for SNES is one of those games that gives these lower end CPUs a run for its money. Most of the time you have to use frame skip with these MIPS CPUs, but I've turned it off here and it runs perfectly fine at 60 FPS. I'm actually really impressed with this. Now this game isn't really hard to run on newer ARM chips, but keep in mind these MIPS CPU are really low end when you compare them to the newer ARM chips on the market. Moving over to some arcade, I'm using the FBA emulator, and this is a CPS 1 game. It runs really well. I tested a few here, and CPS 1 performs fine on this device. Now it's time to move over to CPS 2, and then we'll hit up CPS 3 and see if this device can handle it. So CPS 2 is performing quite well with the built-in FBA emulator. No stutters here, we're at a constant 60 FPS. You can either use the D-pad or the analog stick. So for CPS 3 emulation, I did have to move over to that updated FBA core, and it's working great here, but every once in a while I do notice a little bit of screen tearing with this core, and it only happens with this updated core. Hopefully that's fixed in the future. It's definitely not a deal breaker, but it is noticeable every once in a while. You will see it. And since I'm here, I did have to test out Red Earth for CPS 3 using that updated core. Performance is phenomenal here. I'm really impressed with the CPS 3 performance on this handheld with this updated core. So moving over to some PS1 emulation, I do have the CPU overclocked to the max here, and I gotta say, this is one of the best performing MIPS powered handheld consoles for PS1 that I've ever tested. In my experience, this is beating out the RG350, especially with that 1.9 GHz overclock. We just have a much higher clock in the CPU, and it seems to handle PS1 really well, even with some of the harder to run games that I've tested in previous videos. And finally, we have Bloody Roar 2. This is one of the harder games to emulate for these MIPS CPUs. No frame skip, I am overclocked, and we're getting a constant 60 FPS. This is actually really impressive to see it running this well. It's playing perfectly, and with PS1 you can either use the analog stick or the D-pad. So yeah, this is definitely the best performing MIPS powered handheld that I've tested for PS1, and it really all comes down to that higher clocked CPU. So in the end, this is one of the best performing Chinese handhelds powered by a MIPS CPU that I've tested on my channel, and I've tested pretty much all of them that have been released. I personally like the form factor, and I don't mind that we only have a single analog stick and dual triggers. Most of the games that are going to run at full speed on this device only require those buttons, but I know a lot of people are going to be upset because they want those dual analog sticks. But I will tell you something about these handheld devices, specifically the RG350 and the 350H. These will never run N64 or Dreamcast at full speed. You might get one or two N64 games that run pretty decently in the future, but that's about it. Basically, both of these handhelds are way too underpowered for those systems, and these companies definitely know that, so they can come out with the RG350H Part 2, Part 3, Part 4, and keep feeding us up by system to system, so keep that in mind. I'd say if you understand what you're getting and you can pick one of these up for around $40 to $50 and you're happy with what it plays now, it's probably worth it. It's a great little supplemental handheld. I do love the form factor. The screen looks great, minus trying to film it with a camera because you get that aliasing. But overall, the RG350H is a solid competitor to, let's say, the RG350. So that's pretty much it for this video, guys. I really appreciate you watching. If you have any questions or you want to see anything else running on the Game Kiddy GDK 350H, just let me know in the comments below. But like always, thanks for watching.